when you feel ready, open your eyes slowly, and let's bring our attention back into the space. There's a lot of different ways to define it, but the way that I like to look at it is the process of coming into contact with your most essential self, and from that inner understanding, and that inner understanding of a lot of different components, and we'll talk about more of them later, but including where does our own anxiety and suffering come from? How does change affect us? From that inner understanding, we come to develop a much more compassionate and wise response to the needs of others. And I look at, in my work, and I have sort of two veins of work, but they're very related. I'm an integrative breathwork practitioner. I have a small clinical practice with clients up in New Hampshire where I live, and I use breath as the core modality for self-healing. And you'll notice as we go through today's workshop, there's a lot of different ways in which breath will show up. And I also work, I run a nonprofit that I founded called Global Grassroots, and we work in Central Africa, in Rwanda, and soon in Uganda, with war survivors and survivors of sexual violence and disaster, in helping to support them in healing from their trauma, developing conscious leadership skills, and then taking their own ideas for the change they want to see in their community through to sustainable nonprofits. And I work with a lot of people in the service arena, first responders, as well as people doing humanitarian work. And I've noticed how critically important personal transformation is to happen along with social transformation, that these are critically important when they come together. And there's a few reasons why, and I hope all of you will discover this for yourselves as well, that the more aware we are, as we were just describing, the more able we are to, through compassion, respond to the other. But also, the more aware we are, the more we learn from the external environment and those that surround us, so that we're not sort of fixed on our own agenda, pushing through without really being attuned to the needs of everybody else. It also allows us to understand when it is that we need restoration. Women in particular are very good at self-sacrifice and not always so good at self-restoration. And if we are not taking care of ourselves, we end up in the realms of disillusionment and burnout, or a lot of anger around perhaps the activism work that we're doing. And so it's critically important to notice when it is we need self-care. And so that level of awareness is very important. And then we'll also find that in doing service work in the world, you not only learn a lot about yourself, but you align with your own purpose and calling and find deep meaning, and that itself can be healing. In Rwanda, when I do this work with my change agents, I share these kinds of practices, and then I invite them to go and practice it in their daily life and come back the next day in class and tell me what they learned and how it's working. And so one day I had this woman raise her hand, and she said, well, I went home after class, and you see, when I was coming here in the morning, I had cleaned my house perfectly. I was, I felt really good about it. When I got home, I was looking forward to just relaxing, and I discovered my kids had totally messed up my house. And I was so angry. Usually I just beat my children. But today I remembered what you said, and I closed my eyes and I took 3 breaths. And I realized that I didn't actually want to beat my kids. I just wanted them to clean up the house. So I was able to just sit there and say, this is why I want the house clean. I want you to clean it up before I open my eyes. And you know what? They did. And I didn't have to beat my kids today. And I thought, oh. And what was amazing is that this woman was working on creating a social venture to work on domestic violence in her community. So we had the opportunity to have a dialogue about in what way do we embody violence in our life, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, and how do we first embody consciousness before we create change. And this experience transformed the way that she was then going to be educating other parents about the violence that they experienced together and how they raised their kids so they could stop the cycle of violence going forward. So a simple 3 breaths can actually do quite a lot.